Welcome to VINTed with Scout Driscoll. Come along with me on my journey into the wine world, where I share thoughtful conversations with wine industry leaders. Get ready for marketing insights from branding and design to sales and social media, and the answer to the ultimate question: what moves wine? I'm Scout Driscoll, founder of Vint Studio and host of VINTed, where I ask top leaders in the wine industry, how do you move wine? Past episodes include conversations on sustainable packaging with John Paul Grogan from Frugal Pack and with Rob McMillan, founder and EVP of the Silicon Valley Bank Wine Division. Make sure you go back and check those out. On today's episode, I'll be talking with Stephan Martinez, a longtime friend and founder of Trysk Print Solutions. But before we dive in, here's a quick note from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by VINTed Wine Branding and Design, where rich storytelling meets smart design. At VINTed, our studio goes beyond the label, guiding wine brands through strategy-rich branding and packaging evolutions. Our work with Cooper's Hawk has helped them grow their wine club to the nation's largest with over 500,000 people. You can learn more about VINTed at vint.studio, and for a free label audit for your brand, email me at hello@vint.studio. I am so excited today to take a deep dive into wine label printing with Stephan Martinez, founder of Trysk Print Solutions in Seattle, Washington. Steph has been in the label space for over 25 years, and his focus is all about wine and spirits. He appreciates the nuances of the craft, as well as pushing the boundaries on technology to help packaging evolve and grow with consumers' taste. Steph, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so obviously VINTed is a wine label design company, wine branding company, but I will say that probably 90% of our work printed over the last 10 years has been with you and Trysk. So I was really excited to have you on the show today.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, like you're a ride or die. so we're so excited to have a conversation today. And as you know, a lot of our listeners are kind of emergent wineries, and so I want to just introduce them to someone I love and one of the coolest guys in the biz, and also share some insights about what happens in wine label printing. Some pitfalls to avoid, things to be inspired by, and we'll go from there. So I'd love to have you introduce Trisk and tell our listeners a little bit more about your printing company and the kinds of solutions that you guys offer.
First off, thank you. I didn't know that about the ride or die. I kind of like that idea with a designer specifically. That's great. Working with you for the last coming up on a decade, I think at least. I mean, it's up there.
Let's see, my daughter was pregnant when we did I was pregnant on my daughter. I was pregnant.
I want to say it was late 14 or 15 at the latest, but it feels longer. And that's the compliment there. It is the compliment of it. So I want to make sure I start with a reciprocal note. Is that is the fun of this industry, is the friendships, the honest friendships. Everyone's rowing in the same direction. Majority of our clients, I like to believe they're earnest, honest friendships with them. And so the collaborative side with your team and ours is paramount. And I like to think if you did work with other printers, you're allowed, that shines through. So I just want to make sure I come right back with an honest compliment saying working with you has just been amazing. It's easy. And we've had stressful stuff, right? Yeah. But I don't even remember them as stressful. I just remember them as challenges that we got across. They're not even negative situations. So it's kind of weird.
Thank you. We're very good at making life hard on printers and web developers because we know enough to be dangerous. We know you can do that, but you might not want to.
It's like a contractor redoing their home. It's just bad sometimes. Yeah.
So tell us more about Trysk and what y'all do.
Yeah. I started in the 90s. So it's interesting. I kind of like to think that I'm 49 right now. So I remember the time of rotary phones and long cords. And at the same time, I'm now on 16 different types of communication any given day, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook Messenger or GChat, Zoom, and so having started one way and the other is interesting and you got to hang on. The print world's kind of like that too. I literally, when I started, we were still doing printing plates with percethylene. I think it's percethylene. We called it perc. And I know I'm going to mess it up. It's basically the same stuff they used to use at dry cleaners. It was caustic. You had to wear a mask, a rebreather. You were in a dark room, literally exposing film and washing out printing plates. And then we went to, a water-based system. And then you change from flexo, starts moving towards high definition plates and stochastics to get the dot levels differently and just the way the math is done for the dot structures, screen angles, all that stuff. And then just if I fast forward now, here is print file. It's not that easy. But I spoke to someone the other day who works with RIPs, raster image processors. They're not really RIPs anymore. They still
Yeah.
call them that, but it's a different technology, at least in the HP side. I think it's
Yeah.
Harlan that does that.
I
So
completely forgot about sending something to rip.
sending something
Like,
to a RIP, right?
yeah, like, wow, that is
Raster.
taking me back.
Yeah. I mean, because even vector files, if you zoomed in far enough back in the day, I think I'm saying this right. Someone's going to like comment saying, no, it's not how, but the stair steps, right? If you have an
Yeah.
A down far enough, you get to pixels, you get to
Yeah.
that. And when you translated that to a physical printing plate, you needed to rip it. So, I'm leading all this up to the time I've been in the industry has been just a interesting, fun, weird. And I love that I started at the very end of that and at the beginning of the digital, I almost said digital revolution. That's too heady. Of the digital move into the space, and then how that grew and is growing every year. There's still a place for offset. There's still a place for flexo, but digital is growing, and the world's getting flatter there too. There's competitors there. I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
So my personal career and Trisk's career really was at one foot in both worlds. And when Trisk started in '08, HPs were really coming into their own. The Indigos were really, really starting to push into the wine industry market more than prior years. They were still kind of getting a few of the speed kinks worked out. So our place really was to become not just specialists in high-end print, but literally specialists in wine, spirits, to some degree beer. I only say that because it's a little bit more of a commodity. It's a little trickier to convince a brewery that, you know, a beer that's going out the door at $1 needs to have foil stamped and sculpted and embossed. That's
Yeah.
trickier than like an $80 cab. And then honestly, cannabis. When the legalization started happening and they're in a shelf space war, you know, the product inside the pouch or the box or the jar or whatever needs to differentiate, and it looks the same on the inside.
Yeah.
So I like to think that Trisk was started with that intention of allowing people to differentiate their brand visually. And this is going to sound corny and set up. To anyone listening, I did not write down notes. I'm not good at that. But it's been a collaborative part of the last 14, 15 years now, 14 years technically, in working with great design houses like you. Prior to 2007, 8, 9, it was a trickier relationship. We had to dumb everything down. You know, you'd get this beautiful image on Adobe Illustrator back in the day, Corel Draw, all these high-end programs.
Quark.
And then we're going to run it. Quark. Oh my God. I had never even thought of the word Quark. I got a publisher file the other day. It was great.
Whoa.
Still get published every once in a while. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't send them to me.
I have we found a way to distill them into InDesign now. But the relationship was inherently, it wasn't contentious. What's the right way? It was polar. The design on the screen almost never really would look like what you could get off press. You had to modify it because to get a certain price point, you needed to be 112 LPI on a water-based ink on a material that was smoother, right? If you want it, or you went offset, and offset, again, still beautiful, still has its place. Digital bridge that gap. You know, so the last 7, 8, 9 years has really been that the ability to be collaborative with designers and marketing firms has been amazing because we don't have to step on their design anymore. We can just say, got it, actually got it. And would you like to see this? You know, like we get to actually play with it a bit. And sometimes it's no, thank you. Please do what I said. Got it. But yeah, that's really what Trisk has been about, is about taking that story that either the winemaker or the distiller or the marketing agency or just the designer themselves wants, and getting it cost effectively to show up on time and that works on the bottle. That's the one secret I think a lot of people misunderstand about the print world. The printers that are at A level, I don't want to say our level, are looking holistically at the project. We're not just looking to make the label that you sent us. It's, does it fit? Does it stick? What's the coating on the bottle? What's the panel? Is it conical? You know, if it is, what are these questions? So that's where we fit into that equation. I feel best. We're consultative.
And you really are. I mean, from experience, I love when we're talking about like how wet safe something is, or whether or not it's the rewind's the right direction, how it's going to lay, if we're going to get bubbles, you name it. There's just so many times where you bring those on press insights that, or, you know, on bottling line insights that really take our work to the next level and ensure that it's going to be executed in a way that I can trust and that is going to really fulfill our final vision. So That's
we
so
we have an
important.
old joke internally of when somebody wants a label to work on a bottle that we know is not going to fit, like, oh, it'll be okay. It'll be okay if it gets up on the shoulder or like that. And our agnostic note is, I'm not arguing with you. Physics is.
Yeah.
Isaac Newton, Sir Isaac Newton from the grave, is telling you this label will not fit this bottle
Yeah.
because it's a millimeter too tall for it's going to hit the shoulder, and that's it. A half millimeter, it'll wrinkle.
Yeah.
The whole top will wrinkle. It'll allow water in, even if you don't see it. There's a moisture penetration vulnerability there now. It's our job to kind of hold that line and just let people know it's like this will fail. And this year in particular, 2022 and 23 at least, is going to be the year of, I keep thinking next year is going to be the year of wrinkled labels because everyone's scrambling for glass.
Yeah.
And even winemakers sometimes, they have to bottle. It's in tank. They got to get the next harvest in. They can't wait. And XYZ Pinot Burgundy bottle looks exactly like the other one. But is it? Or does the shoulder start 2, 3, 4 millimeters lower before it makes its curve up? Or does the bottom drift? And if your printer or your designer is not asking those questions, is the container the same as last year? Just that one question can save everything, because otherwise that label, it'll go on, but it's not going to look good. And it's definitely not going to look good in an ice bucket or a cooler.
Yeah.
So that's going to be missed a lot. Not because anyone's being evil, because everyone's rushing and everyone's trying to get it done and get it out of the tank or get it to market or get it to Costco or whatever. Mistakes will be made. And I'll be honest, we've had a few really close calls, like where we asked that question real late in the game versus the beginning. Like, oh, these one, oh yeah, I didn't tell you. I got totally different glass to make this bottling date. Can I see the bottle? And then we see the bottle, like, oh, hold please. We go and re-engineer everything. So
yeah, or even the bottle drawings are slightly different than the actual bottles.
And they all have a plus minus. That plus minus is there for a reason. It's in very small copy at the bottom. They show you what the tolerance is. But if you design to the plus, joke's on you. I mean, it's there for a reason. You got to take the max, pull out the plus, how much the variance could be. And then that's your max. Yeah. If you start from a hopeful position, it's magical thinking.
It's one of my favorite phrases of yours, magical thinking. Okay, so I feel like
you can want it to be true all you want. I love optimism. Hopeful optimism is amazing, but doesn't necessarily work in the tech world.
But Steph, I have a really pretty bottle rendering.
Yeah. But look how pretty it is. I'm like, I can't wait for the label to look like hell on that bottle at a tasting. Like I've been there enough that I can see it in my head of them apologizing to people as they're pouring it. Oh, don't worry about this. Oh, but it's and it's distracting in tastings when you've got a label that's sliding, disintegrating, wrinkling. I mean, all these problems happen. So that's, we've done that enough. We've allowed ourselves to be convinced with them. It's hard not to get caught up in that energy. It'll all be okay.
Yeah.
Until it's not.
Well, and that's why I have a personal beef with all respect to our competitive set, but I have a personal beef when designers and design studios have nothing but CGI renderings in their portfolio, because that's cheating. Like half the project is getting the label on the bottle and showing that how it was printed in real life, how it applied in real life, like all of those things. Like I have a yellow bottle behind me that's not in my portfolio because it printed like shit. I truly don't believe that people should have their.
It's out of frame. You can't see it. It's off frame, so no one can see it. I just can't move my camera. Like, we all have those.
Yeah, but I really truly believe that design studios need to come clean and show you real photography, and that's why we don't include renderings in our book, because it's what you're talking about. It's when the rubber hits the road, and you need to actually get that label on the bottle, or produce that emboss as deep as you would like it to, and all of those things. Choosing the right substrates is part of the job, right? Which is where we lean to you.
And having the right team in there. So like when you said that, and I know for sure, like I know Lori, like Outshinery has a place in the market. It's when it's misused. It's when it's misused.
That's for marketing.
It's exactly right. It's when it's mischaracterized, and that begins a slippery slope. You need to have adults in the room who are willing to, for lack of a better term, I forgot what the rating is on these, piss off a customer by holding their ground. Like our salespeople and myself have to be able to say, I get that you want this. I'm here. You're paying me for this advice. Mm-hmm. If you were just paying for ink on paper, I would recommend another printer. Like there are cheaper ones out there. There's more expensive. Hopefully we're right down the middle. That's always the goal for, I think, in a good manufacturing space. But if you just want someone to take direction and not give you advice, it's a different outlook. It's a different control set. We have to be able to tell truth to power. So those things when they're like, oh yeah, but my bottle shots look good.
Yeah.
Irrelevant at 6 a.m. when the 220 just went out and the bottling line manager is about ready to kill everybody. And the humidity changed and it's cold that day with a high, like there's all these environmental factors that happen when you got to get the thing to stick to the bottle and then also get shipped well in partitions that are all sandpaper now and then land at a distributor and get put on a shelf at Bevmo and still look good.
Yeah.
The digital drawing is a siren song. Nothing wrong with it, but it has its place. If you're not looking at it holistically, somewhere in there's going to be a snake in the grass.
Yep.
You want somebody to be able to say, look ahead. This decision feels good now. And the better it feels, the worse it is. The better that decision feels and how safe it is, more than likely is fooling you into some form of complacency.
Steph, we're so old and cranky.
It is weird. It is. I do and I don't like it. I like having failed enough to have the experience.
Exactly.
Rob doesn't like me at shows though, because I see the potential negative. So someone brand new will come up like, I'm thinking of this. Like, well, beware of this. Like, well, no, they're all bright and shiny, and they haven't even made a pallet of wine yet. They're looking at their first order of 56 cases of cab, and I'm sitting here telling them like, oh, beware. I'm like, no.
I love that though. Okay, so pretend like we've got a new bright-eyed, bushy-tailed winery, wine producer listening to us right now. Give me a few more pitfalls that you would recommend they avoid.
Get your container set early on. I don't like this one, but it's true. Don't get too clever on your container on your first run. I hear it. I don't like it. I want people to be free to be you and me, get the most beautiful bottle you can get. But the prettier bottles aren't always in stock in the best of times. They tend to be a little trickier. Tapered bottles, just talking containers, right? I won't get into specifics. Excuse me, but the most amount of delta difference from a standard Bordeaux or a standard Burgundy adds a layer of complexity. And on your first order or two, you want to get the wine in the bottle and closed up and labeled and in the box. These are all ways that you need to be able to sell it at some point. Adding all that other stuff is fine. And if you have a good marketing design agency, if you have a good printer, not everyone does. And I don't mean that from a negative, everyone else is bad. Dear God, we are not the pinnacle of anything. I like to think we are, but that's in my own head. But not everyone's rep has had X amount of years or was trained up. They're going to get a file, print the file, ship the file. Yeah. They're not going to ask all the questions. So a first-time winemaker needs to have a consultant that's going to be honest about that. So for me, the first one is container. Just make sure you've got a good supply on it. It's going to be available the next year or two. If you buy this was on sale, they're probably getting rid of it. There's a reason it's cheap. And then the other one is just purely design your opening stuff to what you want. Consult with whoever you're working with, designer, marketing, printer, hopefully, kind of all in ones. I like to think that we are a little bit more than the average per se, but have somebody who's willing to say, yeah, let's work on this early because, and I've mentioned this before, I think to you, maybe in another video, with Lori's, one of the weirdest situations we can get into is somebody will land us a design they've been working on for a year and they say, here it is. And we go, that'll be $8 a bottle, or that's not doable, or that'll take 6 months because we have to get this special tooling in. If you don't,
it's low res,
or it's low, or it's. I know you took this from Shutterstock and somehow got rid of the watermark because it's 72 dpi and the metadata is still there. Getty ImageWorks is right there. They're fairly litigious. So but having that consultancy during the process is healthy. I'm not saying you got to put every rev past your printer or your design or whatever, but let them know early because then we can do our jobs and say, look out for this, watch this. Oh, that's a great idea. Keep exploring that. Mm-hmm. Getting affirmation is healthy also. It's not just all negatives. Finding out you're on the right track brings solace and calm, and you can continue to focus. Yeah. Our internal note with sales all the time is like, their job is to do their thing. Yours is to do this. I don't like when salespeople on our end of the equation will say, well, I need them to answer these questions. Well, I think you need to answer them. You don't need to say, answer the questions. You can say, here's what I see. If you don't agree, let's have a conversation. But otherwise, I don't want a winemaker to know what rewind is or OD and, all the blank liters. That's tech. That's not winemaking. Let them be winemakers or let them be coffee makers or whatever your client is.
Yeah.
So that's the second part, container, and then consult. Let us know early on what you're thinking. I don't care if the job, there's one over my shoulder right here, right there. It's for, I think that's Kenny Hill for Dunham. Yeah.
That wraps all the way around the bottle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love those.
If it's great, but boy, I want to say 2 years of tweaking and math and things like that and getting that right, because the container and I want to say the bottle changed early on. It took, I would say, from opening conversation to print and shipped and on the bottle, at least a year and a half.
Wow. So this is a wine label that is one long label that wraps on an angle around the bottle. It kind of reminds me of the Coppola bottle that Nicole Walsh and I were talking about, where it just wraps all the way around the entire bottle.
And your bottling line has to be on board, because that's more than a 360 wrap, right? I mean, I apologize, I cut you off, but
and I think too, if I had $1 for every time I texted you, hey Steph, is this die cut gonna rewind or wind off? Okay. Literally at least once a week, I'm like, designer shows me a concept and it's the most amazing complex die cut. It's all round on the left side. I'm like, I think that'll work. Steph.
I just spoke to another printer the other day who was looking at investing in laser cut technology. And I'm showing my age when I reply to those things with, I wouldn't do it. You can laser cut a doily, right? A lace doily. All right, have fun putting that on a bottle. You've structurally cored it out. There are applications for laser die cutting where it is better than current technology, whether that's air eject dies, whatever. There's multiple ways to get to that. But the laser cutting one, very energy intensive. It's slow. It has ablation issues on the edges. I know that there's a claim that it's been fixed now. All right. But you don't have a lot of those jobs a year. So you need to maximize, you need to vacate when the sun shines on those jobs, because otherwise that machine's just sitting there, costing you money. Yeah. Point being, it'll probably not work on the bottling line. It'll give you quality issues there. Is it going to peel off the right way? Is it going to hit the bottle and not self-destruct under the pressure wave that hits? So, there's an old Patton Oswalt joke. Science, we're all about coulda, not shoulda. I loved that idea from a technical perspective. Can we is different than should we? And so that's something to think about with tech. Yeah.
Anything else that you would warn against in our episode of doom and gloom? Sorry, Rob.
Sorry, Rob. Warn against asking me open-ended questions and letting me talk for 25 minutes.
Well, also Rob is Trysk's marketing director, and Steph and I were talking earlier about Rob gets gray hairs every time Steph goes on a podcast because he's worried that Steph is going to ramble on about anything.
You know what? No, the process is fun. There's a reason I've been doing it this long. I still actually love it. I kind of like the problems lately. And it's a weird sensation to get an email that's about a situation that's negative. It's a challenge. Let's go make this better. But I'm not happy. Don't get me wrong. When I'm bleary eyed looking at my phone for the morning's emails, the first thing, if I see something negative, it's not like I'm like, yes, let's rise. I don't want to be disingenuous about how great I feel. Yeah, exactly. Oh, inside joke there. Nicely done. I'll tell you offline. But yeah, I don't think there's a lot other to worry about other than assemble the right team. People that are going to tell you the truth, people that are going to be honest with you about pricing. If we send you a cost on something and you say, hey, show your math. Oh my God, I'll bring it on. Can you make it cheaper? For us in general is met with, we can, but we got to alter some things. It's not a car deal. It's not we're starting here to, some companies do that. I get that. They pad knowing they're going to have to negotiate. We've never historically done that. And we've tended to be able to stay that course with most of our customers because they trust in the information. We're not maximizing a job. That's silly. We want them to grow. Every dollar they don't spend on labels, they can put into a tank or an extra tasting room manager. Like it's a cost of goods conversation. So assembling a team. No, I don't think there's a lot of other negatives if you have the right voices in the room being honest with you. Yes, I know you want it to look like this, but it's a number 4 rewind. So that means the left edge is going to lead. And like you just said, and it's got a little pointy piece on it. Yeah. Going to knuckle under. it might knuckle under. Let's throw it on press, get a die cut, send it to you. Like those steps have to be taken.
Yeah.
No, I don't think there's a lot of other negatives. Stay positive and keep moving.
Make good wine.
You go make good wine. We make good labels. You make good design. They make good wine. Yeah, everyone's in their own lane. And when they're all rowing in the same direction, you go farther, faster. It's great.
Yeah. Let's shift a little bit to talk about innovation and what's happening.
Yeah.
What are the haps in the printing world? What are some things that people should know about that they maybe aren't taking advantage of right now with their printers, or any new developments at Trisk?
It's 2022. Be open to any material. We're going to make them prettier this year because there's no material left. It is going to be an interesting year. I definitely want to answer that with an honesty about the current landscape. Dry goods are tricky right now, right? Yeah. For this industry, and I think for any industry, for every conversation you hear about a car not being able to be sold for chips, there's a winery that's struggling to find Stephans, screw caps, or corks, or labels, right? I'm not saying they're having troubles. We are all collectively, whether it's a shipping container issue or just the dry goods. In our world right now, there's a strike in, I think Finland. I'm going to get that wrong. Someone's going to call me out on the Scandinavian side of things. From one of the largest suppliers of the liner, the release liner. That's our computer chip. No one would think of that, but the carrier liner for us.
Yeah.
So I will preface my answer with the next, I'd say 12 to 18 months are going to be about hanging on more than innovation, in my opinion. That being said, it's not like we didn't have things in the pipeline. I still think Densissima has a long way to go. The ultra thick 163 pound paper, only available through Trysk Print Solutions.
Yeah. Cotton paper, right?
Cotton's still around. Well, and actually Densissima is a cotton face.
Yeah.
So it's a cotton face on it. So yeah, you've got a cotton feel. So you've got a little bit of a luxurious, tactile feel to it, that you can then do anything with on top. But the idea of that one being, debossed heavily, I still really want to put those into the world. We have a sake paper. We've been working for about a year and a half on that now. And we were right on the edge, and I think we can order it, but the pandemic has definitely hurt that one. It is a true handmade washi paper out of Japan that was coming through a third party that we were going to get converted over for labels, and we're going to test them that way. It is not inexpensive. If anyone can, I'm sure that's not shocking. But there's no sake style, true sake washi papers out there that I've seen in our industry in the US, at least.
Yeah.
There might be an EU version that I haven't seen, or especially Spanish. Spanish labels tend to be beautifully creative. But that's really the washi paper. I really like to bring that to life by the end of this year. Other than that, the technology itself is on the horizon for the printing presses themselves to change. And I don't want to get super wonky about that, but digital is getting stronger faster. The dream of being able to do a real creative stuff quickly and more cost effectively is coming to fruition every year.
Nice. Yeah. And I feel like so many of our digital pieces are always so amazing. There've been very few times in my career where digital hasn't been able to do what I wanted it to do. I think that was neon. It's like one label
don't even
was
talk
like,
about neon.
Steph, give me neon. And you're like, oh.
No, right? I hope my answer was no. We'll try with no.
Yeah, no. It was like, I'm like, but there's this random esoteric toner that you can get this one hot pink neon, and you're like, no, it's not going to happen. So designers listening, give up your neon dreams right now.
Do it. Don't. It just, it's not that we don't want to try. It's not that I haven't pulled off a couple of, here's the word, mediocre ones.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this before we started, the Mandela effect. I have a belief on neon. This dovetails with that. I think people see something in neon or blacklight and they have this nostalgic memory of it more than the reality of it. I think maybe they were in a college dorm. Maybe they were altered. They were having a great night and they remembered that poster that was neon and it was great. I'll bet if they were able to time travel back to that moment, they would just go, oh yeah, it's kind of pink. Yeah. Because the reality of neon is that it's not neon. It's not neon or krypton or argon in a lamp. It is an ink on a paper. It's just inherently not going to shine at you. There's no luminescence. It's all reflectivity. Yeah. So the neon note for me is always, it's the same as metallic ink. Oh, it looks okay.
Yeah.
after months of research and custom inks and everything else, like the plus versus
Yeah.
non-plus. They're like, oh yeah, I guess that was worth $3 a label or whatever insane price it
Yeah.
ends up being because of the custom inks. So
That's another great pitfall. Never put metallic ink on an uncoated stock. Period. It'll just
metallic
vanish.
ink has a metallic flake in it. The
Yeah.
metallic flake is heavier than the rest of the suspension it's in. It's going to soak down into all those valleys of that paper because a white gloss is super smooth, and then you get more and more ridges, and all the metal flake goes into the valleys, and the light doesn't bounce. We're back to it. It's physics arguing with you, not your printer. It's
Wow.
sorry.
I never knew
Yeah.
why. I just knew that it sucked. It was like,
I usually leave it there, but I
whatever.
figured for the purposes of this, and again,
Yeah.
I can hear an ink text, Flint or Exis or
Yeah.
whatever saying, "No, we fixed that." Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, it still looks like crap on uncoated paper. It looks very
It doesn't
gray,
look
silver, but not,
brown
metallic.
mustard. Brown mustard.
Yeah.
I still call it the
Yeah.
Gouldens mustard effect. Sometimes it'll look a little eggshelly because it'll soak in more, so you get these little brown splotches, and it literally looks like you just ordered a charcuterie plate. I'm like, the word Chardonnay wasn't supposed to be evocative of quince paste and cheese. That's not what they were going for. Yeah.
Okay, now I want to go to Paris. Anyway, okay, this is super, super fun. I just want to wrap things up by asking, and this is always my hot seat question, and I know we've covered a bunch of this already, but what is your number one advice for moving wine, for selling more wine through the printing, through the label? And I know sometimes printing can make things more expensive. So maybe if we're getting super elaborate, if we're talking about higher price point wines that they can afford to invest in a little bit of pizzazz in their design, but what's your number one recommendation for increasing sales?
Hopefully everyone can see the look on my face, how poorly I prepare for these meetings. And I did look at reading notes and trying to, that's a really good question. I'll do the political thing. That's a very good question, Scott.
Yeah.
And buy myself some time. I think it's one I've mentioned before, which is a good thing, I guess, right? Being the same note every time usually means that it is your go-to. Intention, Lex and Sandy, if you're listening, they run a company called H2 Ohm Water, and intention. It was a word I picked up from them in this world. I knew the word intention before, but the word intention for this answer, I think, is what's there. What are you trying to convey? It doesn't need to be expensive. You don't need textured, sculpted emboss and consecutive numbering and pink foil on your rosé to convey your brand's intention. Some of the most beautiful, striking labels I have done in my life are Spartan. Now that's my taste, right? I'm a MoMA, Guggenheim type person versus classical stuff. It's fine. So I'm the audience for that. But that doesn't mean I don't appreciate really good, Renaissance art versus pointillism. Like, it doesn't mean I can't see both sides. And most consumers, I think, are on that line. Procter and Gamble did a ton of studies back in the 70s and 80s on marketing habits, on buying habits, and how people saw different brands, and repetition was a big thing for them, and product placement on the shelves. But I gleaned from some of those old studies back in the day about how they could kind of see what you were driving at. They could also see, especially probably anyone born past 1975-ish, you can't market to them too on purpose, right? We're a little broken that way. We've been marketed to our whole lives, G.I. Joe, the Kung Fu Grip, and all that kind of old stuff from the 80s and 90s. So if you have intention and it's honest, and this is what you're trying to do, I think that's what comes through. So if it's like, look, this is a great wine, $9.99. It's $2 chuck. There's a great example of that. Clearly we don't do that label with Bronco, and I don't know where it's printed, but $2 chuck was honest. It's great. It's great value. It's good wine. Trader Joe's, I want to say part of Trader Joe's uptick in the United States came from $2 chuck. I think they were this virtuous cycle of Trader Joe's you got to get it at Trader Joe's. What's Trader Joe's? Trader Joe's didn't just exist out of nowhere. They were growing, but I think they both helped each other grow. And it was because it was an honest campaign. So I like to think that works for somebody who's doing, 5 pallets on their first order or a barrel. Be honest, talk to your people, tell them what are you trying to achieve, and try to execute that and be ready to pivot. because not necessarily from what the market tells you, because as an entrepreneur in the wine industry on any level, you have to be ready to pivot because you're going to have to.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the thing. Just be honest about your intentions. If your intentions are, this is really cheap wine and I think it's great, and I want to put a piece of duct tape on the front. The government doesn't care. You can do that, or go low rent on it. A white label with one word on it. I don't know if anyone else I remember from being younger and in college, beer. I want to say there was a white label beer can we had in our school. It was just said beer on the outside. We did not care. We were their audience. They were our dealer, right? It didn't matter at that point. All marketing is kind of same. Your voice is speaking to a certain demo, and it's not all of them. So you pick the one that works for you. But intention. I'll try to stick the landing there on intention.
No, that's wonderful. I feel like you just summarized the last 15 episodes of this podcast. Where it's like, you're totally right.
Have a goal.
Yeah, no, we definitely think of it as brand strategy and understanding your consumer and walking in their shoes and design thinking and all the fancy ways we could wrap that up in a bow. But you're right. I think it really is about being yourself, being intentional with that, having a strategy behind what you do, knowing your target consumer, and then building all of that into things like how big your label is, what's on it, how elaborate is it, what substrate do you use, all of that, and then.
I was going to ask you the same question, but I feel like you're summarizing. I honestly, I was going to ask you, so what would yours be from your viewpoint? And I mean, I think we're in harmony on it then. Yeah. I mean, that would be your most important also. It's like, tell from Scout's chair, what do you want it to say? Our job is to show you stuff to get you there. But if the voice behind it isn't clear, or if it's worse, if it's muddled, I need to check with 3 people before we even approve this rev. You kind of know you're in a rough road. So it sounds like I wanted to try to talk less, somehow screwing that up, and ask you, but I think we're on the same page.
Well, Steph, you are the guest of this episode.
Yeah.
So you can talk all you want. But no, I really do, I think it really is about the intentionality and really, one of our taglines for VINTed is rich storytelling, smart design, because that's what it's all about, right? It's about understanding your story, making that story.
Don't sell.
What's that? Solve, don't sell. Yes, that's one of my favorite lines too. But it really is about the richness in that storytelling comes from your brand strategy and knowing what makes you unique and different, and allowing that to saturate the story that you're showing. And people read design faster than words, but if you don't know what you're saying, it's just cool, or it's just trend, or it just looks expensive or not expensive. So you really have to build in more facets to your visuals and your brand to convey that. And I think at the end of the day, that truly sells wine. There's so much of the same out there. There's so much of the same by AVA, by region, by varietal. Like there are conventions upon conventions in wine, and to a certain tier of wine, I can understand how people want to fit into that convention. If I'm buying a $250 bottle of Bordeaux, I want it to feel like the other Bordeaux's that cost $250.
You're not putting a piece of duct tape art on that one.
No,
like that. That would be a little foolish.
But also, younger generations aren't buying that wine. And one of my missions is to help the wine industry move towards younger generations. And I think that's where you can really afford to break out and be unique. One of our philosophies here at the studio is like, you can be yourself. You can be yourself and be successful in business. And helping people find that voice is what's really important for selling wine, because then it helps you find your audience and your consumer.
Well, look at the explosion of like YouTube channels, or Patreon is something I actually pay for on a monthly basis. And YouTube, I pay for YouTube Red because of the curated experiences I tend to get based on referrals. And they're not just algorithms to make me watch more. They are also that. I'm not naive. They are very much that. But the fact that you can see things that dovetail to your audience, and every once in a while I'll be watching some crazy, they're like, how do gravity systems work? And like, there's a channel, I can't think of the name of it, all of a sudden, I want to give him a shout out. Grady, I want to say it's practical engineering. I'm going to get it wrong, but it's literally like how do wastewater treatments work? How do air hydraulic hammers, like the science behind everything else? And I'm like, oh, this is cute, boy. And I look at the subscribers or that video, and it's like 400, maybe 1,000 people have watched the same thing about leach fields and sewage treatment plants. That's both terrifying, but also really heartwarming. That tells me there's an audience for that person never would have been able to find before. Yeah. That gentleman, Grady, I think, couldn't go to the local CBS affiliate and says, I want to do a weekly half-hour show on PBS about bye, door, hit him on the way out, right? But he can do it at home now with a really good mic, some good sponsors, and talk about subject. I really do think there's an analog to what you're saying here, is that you don't need the traditional channels anymore. I'm not disavowing the large distributors. I'm not saying direct marketing to restaurants is bad. There are all of them now. You can do a campaign online and get 50,000 people all of a sudden that might want your product. That didn't exist 10 years ago, let alone 25 when I started. Like, it is just the sales channels themselves are a little more esoteric and can be very targeted. And I find that to be a fascinating way to go. I honestly hadn't thought about those terms until you brought that up, but I like that idea of curate your own market. Chances are, if you like something, there's a decent percentage of the population that also likes it enough to buy it.
Yeah.
You've got to get out in front of them.
Market that stuff. Get it out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we've been talking to Stephan Martinez, founder over at Trysk Print Solutions. Steph, where can people learn more about you and Trisk?
Website. I think I closed one of the other podcasts this week too. LinkedIn. I will never see it. I just don't go on there.
I'm going to change that, guys. I'm going to get stuff on LinkedIn.
Every time I'm on there, I look at your stuff. You're on there. So I'm always on there. I'm liking stuff at 2 a.m. Trysk.com, T as in Tom, and the end letter is K as in kilo. It's not Trysk. TryskPrintSolutions.com or Trysk.com is an informative place. We have our information on there, especially about new materials, and processes are on there. And then honestly, email the info at Rob watches 24/7 like I do. We tend to be on it, and sales staff will always reach back out very quickly. Or Rob or I might, because we're a little OCD and type A. So we still enjoy that. But yeah, the website's the best place to go. If nothing else than examples. I mean, this wall exists for several reasons, but one of them is, a reminder of successes. A lot of these up here are reminders of what not to do. They may look okay on the bottle, but the process itself might have gone sideways. But also the website is a version of this. It's an idea board in a way. It's what you can look at, draw from an inspiration. The art is almost irrelevant, but how did somebody change a dye shape to flow with the bottle better? Is it a tapered burgundy? Is it a straight-sided Bordeaux? What did person X, Y, and Z do? So the website's photography alone, I think, it's meant to be evocative. It's not meant to be, hey, look how cool we are. It's meant to be kind of a dream board, of like, oh, okay, I see what they did there. Now with my logo, and start envisioning it that way. So honestly, the website's the best place to go for that.
It's all CGI, right?
It's all CG. It's all completely AI. AI renders.
It's all just renders of labels that you wish you could have printed. No. Yeah. Go.
Oh, different story. I won't go into that one. Yeah. They're all ours. They're not a competitor's. Oh, I've seen ours on some competitors' websites. Sometimes it's like, they don't do anything about it, but it's pretty funny. No, those are all live projects that have happened before and probably are still printing. A lot of the ones that are up there are high watermarks. Those aren't like these, where some of them had something go sideways, where like they showed up late or there was a foil that failed or something like that. Everything on there is beautiful and on purpose with intention.
All right. So go to Trysk's website and check them out. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of VINTed. I can't wait to introduce you to our next guest next week. In the meantime, check out vint.studio, and you can listen to all of our former episodes as well. Steph, thank you so much. And everyone, have a great day. And thanks for listening to VINTed.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, Scout.
Tune in for the next VINTed. Subscribe today. For future episodes, marketing advice, and more, follow me on Instagram at Scout Driscoll. Learn more about VINT's design and branding services for wineries at www.vint.studio.